Bam.
Hey, it's Brian Andrews, and you're watching the Break It Down show with Pete Turner.
Yeah, we're rocking the house, man. It's raining here in Southern California. I'm in the tent. So if you all hear that pitter patter in the background, we're actually having some rain. Oh my God. We had some in December and it's like, this is going to be a good wet year. And then it didn't rain again. It's like the first real rain since then.
Do you have your rain collection, device out there funneling all the rain into some blue barrel that you can save?
We have rain barrels and we just emptied one of them. And I don't know where we're going to put it next year. But like, here's how much it doesn't rain in Southern California. We don't have rain gutters in our house, and nobody does.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That means you do not get much rain.
We do not get much rain. Yeah. So the yard looks great because we got a wedding coming up on Saturday. So we've been watering everything. And, in Orange County, we use reclaimed water. And that might sound gross, except for the fact that you need water. And if it's good enough for astronauts, and we have filtering technology. I know this seems crazy to everybody. But, here we go. Like, we have this problem. Like, we could take this water and use it several times over. We could put it right back into the earth. We're good. But a lot of California doesn't like that.
Why? I mean, you can't afford not to, I would think, given your water table there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We also have this problem of like the environmentalists will take anything that might provide more water and they'll put it into court. This is no thing against them, but that's how they fight the system.
Yeah.
And then you have like the farmers that complain like, hey, and they literally are either making food or putting the water right back into the water table. One of the two things happens, and so it's just a pass through. But they don't get to have anything because they're like big ag, like big ag. I don't know what big ag is. Anyhow, they have all these things. And if we just started reclaiming water, a lot of the problem for now is solved,
Yeah, I saw an article about Lake Mead. It's so low that bodies are starting to surface. They're, maybe these are people that the mob have dumped in there or something like that. So that's a little freaky, right?
That is a little freaky. And I guess Brian's going to be here in a minute. In the meantime, we'll talk. We're talking about Sons of Valor too. When you are looking at the news, I know I do this for my show. Do you see like, oh, that's a piece of a story? Oh, you know what? I got to keep that in mind. I mean, like you've got the Lion of Baghdad in this current book, right? So are you looking for things all the time, kind of like filling your head?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I have just a running tab of notes, that I'll copy links and stuff and keep those going for, and if I know what story it's going to go for, I'll make a note. Oh, this would be good for this story. Otherwise, I'll just have a long list. And every once in a while, I'll go through and look at them and see.
Yeah. So you guys aren't in this series. This is the second book, but these are established characters, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm interested in the supernatural aspect, and I'm saying supernatural just to be, sort of like wide open on this. But there is like this religious. I don't know, how would you categorize the supernatural aspect of the series?
Well, so that would be the Shepherd series. So that'd be Dark Angel.
Oh, okay, my bad.
Yeah. But that's fine. Like it's definitely worth talking about. So I think what's interesting is if you take Sons of Valor, you compare it to the Shepherd series. Sons of Valor is this straight up secular military thriller, and that's sort of our core brand. But talking with lots of folks who've been, at the pointy tip of the spear and serving, you always feel like you're confronting something more than just a tactical situation. You feel like you're confronting evil sometimes. And that was sort of the premise of the Shepherd series was, hey, let's explore this idea that there maybe is something else going on behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's an interesting look, and it's a great story device, right? And in this case, it plays out in terms of religion. But you're right. There's a lot of good versus bad. Our perceptions of what is evil. We know that our adversary is playing as hard as they can, and if they can invoke God on their side, I promise they're going to.
Oh, sure.
It's all around us. And one of the things that we suck at in my actual modern war is, and I get the privilege of kind of working in this area. We'll try to weaponize religion. Right. And we're looking for the bad guys. Like, hey, how about looking for the dudes that have influence over their flock? How about take those guys and get them involved in the decision-making process? Because I tell you right now, there's no major community decision made in Afghanistan that doesn't involve some kind of religious elder or elders, right? But we don't think that way. We think a separation of church and state. But both in Iraq and Afghanistan, the word Islam or the presence of Islam is obvious. It's actually in the title of the former Afghanistan government, right? And then Iraq has Allah Akbar on the flag. I mean, if we think that we can separate these things, you can't. You can't.
Yeah, and it's easier to say, hey, Bob is wrong. But if Bob says, hey, it's not me, it's God, right? Now you're challenging this higher authority. So that changes the whole calculus too, right? It's harder to challenge a deity than it is to challenge just an individual tribal leader who's, acting in his own self-interest.
So one thing that I experienced in Afghanistan, Pete, that was kind of interesting was I had this young interpreter. His name we called him Romeo. Really cool kid. But one of the things, back to the idea of religion controlling things in those parts of the world, is this kid said, if you guys really want to help us, what you really need to do is teach everyone how to read, because it's exactly what you said. They control people with the religion. And in these tribal communities, the Quran says whatever I tell you it says. I'll tell you the parts you need to know. And so by keeping them from their own religion and being the intermediary between them and what they're supposed to believe, they can control an entire population. And I thought for a 19-year-old kid, that was insanely insightful, that he was like, dude, just teach everyone in my village how to read and we'll stop listening to this guy because we'll say that's not what it says.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how the Reformation started, right? He's like, actually, I read the Bible.
Yeah, I don't remember. I didn't see any of that.
You just kind of made some of this stuff up here in the Catholic Church. Also along those lines, not only having the religious elder there for that big decision, because we don't think about that, but also that the idea of education, right? So the Taliban goes in and burns the school down. You know what's in every school in Afghanistan? Quran, every single one. And so we take this hit because, there's books being burned or we're peeing on them or whatever it is. But every time the Taliban goes and burns a book in school, we have to go, hey, they just burned the Quran, but we don't have a command over that aspect of the religion. And so you don't get that benefit. And the other thing is when you build a school for girls, you have to call it the Mullah Omar School for Girls. So now you're naming it after this important guy, the Taliban, and then they're like, damn it, we can't attack it because it's our guy, And so you have to play the game the way the game needs to be played. But we don't look, and I'm not saying that's the answer, but you have to think in those terms, like, how do we make this thing unassailable? Like we had Jam in Iraq was handing out books. And I'm like, well, there you go. We're handing out books. They're handing out books. Let's just do it more like they do it, but with the books that we want to hand out, and just mirror our messaging to theirs. And then it forces their hand religiously to be like, shit, we're not against that, And so you have to find those kind of things with religion. Otherwise, you let the enemy have all the say and all the control over how religion works in that fight.
Yeah, that's right. And I will say this, as hard as it is to admit, one of the areas where Army far exceeds what Navy Special Operations does is that space of cultural engagement, that space of psyops. I think that Army Special Operations does that tremendously well, and it's an underappreciated part of the fight.
Yeah, for sure. How do you guys weave in these bigger military aspects of what you do? Because a lot of it's, smaller teams, that kind of thing. Do you guys consider, like what division and corps and COCOMs do in terms of how these things are applied? Or is that not part of what you guys have to worry about?
I mean, we try to represent sort of the chain of command all the way from, highest level all the way down to the operators, because we feel like that's important. I think when you're an operator, maybe when you're very junior, you just are very concentrated on staying in your lane and following orders. But I think the more and more you do these things, especially if you're an introspective person, you're going to start questioning, well, why are we doing this? And you'll start asking those questions. And as you get promoted, those are questions that you need to be asking, right? Does this make sense? Why are we doing this? I'm not saying you're challenging orders, but, we're not robots. We're not out there just following things blindly, right? So I think that's one of the beautiful things about, the way our military works is that as we get promoted, as we get more and more senior, our leadership model, we want people to ask questions. We want people to try to understand the basis and maybe challenge from at least a logical standpoint, so that we're making the best decisions we can up and down the chain of command. So we do try to represent that. We'll have, characters get promoted as the series advances, and they struggle sometimes with the fact that, hey, now I feel like I'm trapped in this bureaucracy. Am I really adding value? Yeah, I am adding value because I'm part of the leadership team now.
Yeah. And I think, Pete, like, in special operations, it's different than conventional forces. It is not a democracy. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but everyone has a voice. And, it's an expectation that if you got something to say, if you have an idea that might help us out and you disagree with what we're talking about, you need to voice that. It doesn't mean that it's going to change. And then in terms of the blending of all of these other support elements, that's something I think do really well. Don't you think, Brian? I think more than a lot of people writing in this space, we try to give a nod to that team aspect. You see it a lot in the Tier 1 series with this Ember organization. But as we stood up Sons of Valor and started to focus on this JSOC SEAL team, we wanted to show that. So right from the get-go, we created this Whitney Watts character who is the fish out of water, who is the intelligence analyst. And we show not just her role functionally in the team, but how those relationships that are built in those teams are so important. You got to have a relationship in Tier 1. Richard Wang, he's an important guy. Like, he's annoying as hell, but he matters, and he knows that he has agency, and we show that in the series. Same thing here with Whitney Watts and some of the other support elements. Yeah. We want our reader to see that this is a team effort. There's no superhero in our books.
This is so true. You guys' books, they're really fantastic. Anybody here, I'm going to put the link right here. Anybody who wants to get in, there's so I can use my finger. I got to point backwards. There's the link down there. There's the link down there. Here's what I always say: buy this book, buy it for a buddy, do a buddy read. If you get it, I'll read it with you. We'll talk about it. I basically get all these books. Look, here it is. I got stuff stuffed in it because I've been reading it and taking notes and everything. So get Sons of Valor 1, get Sons of Valor 2, get Dark Angel, get all of these things, because these guys these guys are busy and they write fantastic books. I wanted to bring up, gosh, and it's so hard to remember which book it is. Which book has that amazing kill house scenario? Is that Dark Angel, where they go in?
Dark Angel.
Okay. All right. Here's my pitch, right? You need to have that for the badass collectors, where you go in and you have to encounter these people. You have to identify the person as placement and access, and then poof, they disappear right in front of you. Because there's for the audience, there's like a virtual reality aspect. It's like a augmented reality where you might have these characters and there's shots going around. So I can die as a badass guy who can collect in the field. I can die quickly in the conversation by not meeting the right person, by not connecting the people that I have to connect to get to the information that helps the team in some way. Right. And you don't know. And we never practice this at the level that, like the awesome kill house thing. How do we build one of those so that you get to see how hard it is? Have you guys read Daniel Levin's book, Proof of Life?
No,
it's on my list though.
It's so good. And I did a show with him. I'll put a link up for it. And the reason why I'm saying these things, I'm always pushing the intel side of things, and your guys' support characters are fantastic. This is not a critique at all. I love it. But I'm going to challenge you guys to build this kind of part of it. Is like, how do you make incredible people on the collection side, right? Yeah. So that they're not bookish and they're not, like, I'm helpless, I need rescuing. A lot of times. I know you guys don't do that, but that is a very common trope, right? Where it's like, Fats is fat because he's, lazy, but boy, you put him on a computer, and
right.
I hate
Well, I'll say two things on that, Pete. One is something that most of the people that are paying attention know, and that is that training is huge. I'm not familiar with a VR like we did in Dark Angel. It would be so cool. You got my mind is spinning. I have to get off the call and start writing that, but it would be really, really cool to do that. But they do set up these scenarios where they send guys into an actual community with like normal civilian people that don't know there's a training thing going on and that sort of thing to build those skills. Another way that we try to show it in Sons of Valor that you'll actually see perhaps a little bit more in Sons of Valor 3 is we give a nod to the complexity of that job by taking our operators and putting them into that situation. I don't want to give anything away for book 2 or for book 3, but there's this place in this arc where the operators have no choice but to try to function in that space that they take for granted. And so they learn, I'm not good at this. Like, this is Whitney Watts is really cool. Like, that she can do this. Like, there's more to it than just scratching your head and looking at your tattoo and thinking about, what's on your computer. And so that's another way. In addition to bringing those characters forward, we also try to show our operators on that rare time that they're the fish out of water now, right? They're the ones that are operating in this other space, and they're like, wow, this is really complex.
Yeah, we have one of the guys watching has a comment. He mentioned, a paralysis by analysis, and we try to work that into the plot sometime, because you can overanalyze, and sometimes when you have that mission, there's a scene in the first book that comes to mind where Whitney is there, she's in the talk, and in real time everything is evolving, and at one point Chunk's like, look, I don't have time to wait for you to figure out what's going on. I just have to go based on the information I have, and we just have to move. And I think that it's that synergy between intelligence collection and operations that is so interesting and so important. And we try to bring up this idea of trust too. Sometimes you're going to have to trust your analyst, even though if you're in the field and you're not sure, maybe it doesn't feel right, you might have to trust that analyst or that person providing intelligence to you to guide you, and then vice versa, right? Sometimes the analyst is just going to say, you know what, this operator has got 20 years of experience. He's going with his gut. Maybe I don't have something to support either way, but I'm going to support that decision. So that trust component is huge in these stories.
Yeah.
And especially when you make it based on relationship, which was what you remember, right, Pete? That's when you had a relationship with the people you were supporting, it was a whole different dynamic and so much more functional than when you're just the Smith or the Jones that blows in, says, here's what we need you to do. And they're like, dude, I don't know you. Like, I mean, we'll do it if we're tasked to do it, but I don't know you. The relationship is what makes it so incredible.
That relationship is internal and external too, right? So it depends on the unit you're with, the commands you support, but also the enemy and the community around that enemy, and how they protect that person or protect themselves from that person by keeping me, there's all of this inner dynamic of the social aspect, which makes my end of the job just so damn impossible, because if the commander doesn't trust me, right? I've had commanders look at me and say, hey, Pete, like this targeting package, we're going to approve it. What do you think? Right. And they're asking me for my gut. And I'm like, well, I mean, all I can say is, the only thing I would ask for is more time, like, let me get some of your other collectors dialed in on this and see what we can figure things out. Or maybe I'll go out and do it. But because, and this is a real thing, right? Commanders targeting people, their job is to impose their will. And that also means, like, I need to go kill somebody. And then they ask me, who should we kill? You're like, I don't know. You got bad guys lined up, and they're bad people that we've done targeting packages on that you don't think twice about it. But we also know as a default, we want to kill people, And so if that's your default, you're going to kill the wrong people at times. And that makes my job hard, because now we're not trusted in the community because we just killed a guy that they love. And oh shit. That can be murderous, because someone who was otherwise like non-compliant with anybody all of a sudden becomes a passive enemy towards you. That's dangerous. And that's hard for a guy like me to suss out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
No question there. And we're also comparing reality versus a thriller, right? And so you have to work within what's there. I also love that you guys take the superhero and crack them into other pieces. So it's not just like, I'm here, I'll save the day, I can fight, I'm brilliant, I'm in fantastic shape, I never miss a shot. You guys don't have that person, like you said earlier, Jeff, right? And that's one of the things that makes your guys' books great.
Yeah, that's because we never met that person.
I know this collector, as badass as I am, I made more mistakes than I got things right,
Yeah, there you go.
all the time with that stuff. One of the other things I've come across recently, and I'm curious of your guys' thoughts. So my buddy and I, we deployed to Bosnia together, and I just found him the other day, and they're writing, Mike Guardi is writing this really cool history of our deployment to Bosnia, because when Delta Company, a company of counterintelligence people, augmented by a bunch of interrogators, because the interrogators are being pushed out of Germany, right? They were not going to be interrogators because this is the mid 90s. There weren't going to be wars with EPWs anymore. And so they had this weird company that was only temporary. And then they all of a sudden we deploy downrange, right? And so he writes this great screenplay about how we did our job day in, day out. And it's fantastic. But there was one point where like, like the Colonel Flag, right? Who's always out on our ass. Our boss is like, I don't like you guys. That guy finally gets his. And so the characters, the myself and Greg characters get to go to Split for a month, just take a break because they did this really incredible thing. But that lieutenant kind of gets chastised. And I'm like, hey, Greg, no colonel is going to look at a lieutenant and just like flip the script on him and not use that as also a mentoring point. He's going to be like, hey, Jeff, and he's going to talk to Jeff directly. You need to understand what these guys are and what they did if you're going to become a good officer, right? Those mentoring things happen all the time in the military. I'm using a long example here, but I want people to understand this, that one of the big things we do in the military, and it's constant, is mentor all the time, so that the next version of you is prepared. They have your wisdom. You're trying to pass these lessons into them. How does that work in your guys' series?
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a real thing, and I think you see it. Brian's got tons of great stories from his community of exactly that thing, where you walk on the boat and you don't know where anything is or what anything does. You've been through the school, but that's not the same. And if you don't have a good mentor, both from an officers and your senior NCOs, then you're screwed, right? Completely. Yeah. When the way we write, when you're writing these thrillers, it's a little harder in the world that we created in the first series in Tier 1 to show that, because we're showing these late career guys who all come from multiple places. They come together as this badass team. We do try to do that a little bit more in Sons of Valor. So what you'll see in Sons of Valor is a little bit more of diversity, both gender and ethnicity, but also age and experience. And so we have a couple of younger operators who, they're just coming on board into this JSOC element, and they've still got things to learn. They're a little less mature and stuff. So while we may not have had the opportunity yet to really create a mentor arc where someone starts like that and ends somewhere else, we definitely have planted the seeds for some of that in characters like Edwards and Tripp and some of these younger guys. And also just the diversity of personalities, which is my favorite thing of my time in the military, was you get this group of guys that like probably wouldn't even hang out anywhere else, and they become literally brothers because of this. It's really cool.
And they're often in that case, they're all alphas, right? And they're alphas of alphas, and they still manage, and they have got enormous egos, right? I mean, I've worked with these guys. You see it, wonderful people, but if you are passive in some way, or and look, I'm not talking like a beta. I'm talking about someone who just isn't that type of person, a lone wolf. You've got to figure out how to work into that group that's hyper competitive and accept that you have to compete as part of your bona fides, right? It's a real interesting world where you have these guys, and then once you come off a team or out of that environment, like Dan Crenshaw, right? He would rather just go fight with one eye as opposed to being in Congress, because that's how he's wired, right? It almost puts a cage around them, and they have to figure out how to get out of that cage later on in life. It's such an interesting dynamic when you see SEALs age out of the job, but are desperate to stay in it,
Yeah, and that's another element. I'm glad you brought that up. That's another element that you'll see in the Tier 1 and at some point in Sons of Valor. We also explored in the Shepherd series this idea of expiration date and the impact that has on someone. A 20-year career is a long time, and you got a lot, but you have a lot of life left after that. These guys are late 30s maybe when they truly age out. Maybe they've moved in and done some of the training command stuff first, but by the time they transition truly out of the military, they've spent an entire adult life doing one thing really, really well, and trying to find how that translates into the next chapter of their life is an enormous challenge, and something that, as I know you're aware, Brian and I, we use our platform and invest a ton of our time into finding opportunities to help people in that transition, to remind them that you're not alone. There's other guys that have transitioned. You still have a team out there, that sort of thing. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a real thing that we don't want to beat to death in a thriller, obviously, but we definitely want it to be there. We want that concept to be there. You're going to see that a lot in, the Tier 1 series in book 6 and book 7 that comes out next year. And I think you open up the Shepherd series and Dark Intercept with that idea. Here's a guy that's medically retiring after 15 years, and the entire book starts with, well, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And he finds a new purpose. But that's a real thing, and it's a real challenge for veterans, something that there's not as much assistance with as there should be.
That's such a reality. I mean, I'm 52. I've got a lot of combat miles on my body, and I traveled to Colorado this past weekend, and I put a lot of my gear on my back in a backpack, right? And it probably weighs 40 pounds, and it's just normal. I don't feel it anymore. It's like once you've done 100 push-ups, in a row, and you get good at that, you can just do, as long as you want me to do flutter kicks and push-ups, it don't matter, because I can just do them indefinitely. Except my body's not built for that anymore. And so now I'm like, my rib's out of place, because things just don't hold together like they used to. And I'm constantly trying to rehab my body and get what's useful out of it. But I have to make completely different decisions now on how I approach things physically, because there's only so much gas left in this tank. And it's a pretty shitty gas, too. It's like, it hurts so bad right now. I just sat down, and so the default of badassery, it gets taken from you, whether at some point you have to give up some aspect of who you were and deal with who you are, and then also protect who you're going to be.
Yeah, it's an emotional blow. It's a psychological blow that I think is, unless you've experienced it, you can't possibly overestimate it. You go from being a dangerous man to someone who can work out in the gym and then come home, and Brian and I were talking about this the other day, like do a really cool workout. And I swam like 3 kilometers and I'm feeling like my former self. And I get home and I reach for a coffee cup and my shoulder pops out. I can't work out for 4 days. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy at all.
Well, I love that you said swimming, because I'm just now getting back into the pool after a break from some lethargy, but also some injuries.
Break from some lethargy.
And in that order, for sure.
Break for lethargy. That's a bumper sticker.
But here's the thing: is I can swim all day long, right? Like right now, I haven't swam probably in 7 months, but I know I can get in the pool right now and I can go swim a mile within an hour easily, without even like having to freak out. As long as I'm mentally right, I'll be okay. However, if my body tells me, Pete, your shoulder hurts, you need to stop swimming, I have to get out of the pool. I cannot tough guy that thing. I will absolutely swim that mile, and I will absolutely pay for it, Jeff, for days.
Yeah.
I'll be like, and it's like this radiating like heart attack pain. I'm just like, oh my God, my whole back,
Yeah.
And I love swimming, but I have to be very, very careful. I have to be very careful. And my competitiveness kicks in and the juices get flowing, and I'm like, I'm swimming,
That's the worst, Pete. That's the worst, when you're like, you found your space and you feel like you're swimming pretty well. And then that 27-year-old kid triathlete gets in the lane next to you and you're like, oh, I can pick it up a little bit. And then that one shoulder that just got operated on 6 months ago says, please don't do this. And if you don't listen, you're not in the pool for like 3 weeks. Like, it's no joke.
And I cannot mess around with that. I live in Orange County. There are champions on the wall of my swim. So there's like little kids that are rocking across. I'm like, how are they swimming that fast? And everything I do about swimming is like a shitter sucker truck next to a Ferrari. Like you got this shitty smelling old tank and one arm flips one way and all that kind of thing. And then I look next to me and I'm like, how can that kid be so graceful and elegant when he swims? I got flippers and snorkels. All this other shit. It's so funny, man. It's hilarious. God damn. Anyhow, let's talk about Sons of Valor too. Brian, what is your favorite aspect of this book? You guys write them so fast. Do you have time to savor like, oh, this is a piece of gold in there?
I think that my favorite part of Sons of Valor 2 is that we tried to paint this picture of Kasim Nadar, like in his evolution, right? So, in book 1, you really, unless your heart is just, a shriveled up, cold, black thing, you should have felt some empathy for this guy, because his radicalization and recruitment process was sort of written to really tug at your heartstrings. And we wanted to feel like if you were in his shoes, you'd be like, yeah, I could see how he'd end up there. He'd had so much loss, so much misery. And he tried to sort of bury his pain and not blame other people for it, but that's hard to do. And so by the end, he's sort of embraced that this is his new destiny. And in this second book, we lean into that pretty hard. And so you get to start to see, like, you're starting to say, wow, like, I kind of felt bad for this guy, but I don't think I feel bad for him anymore. He's becoming a true villain. And as he's starting to figure out, how do I get myself to a higher level of villainy? How do I accomplish the missions that I think this organization needs to do? Our heroes, Chunk and Whitney, they're really playing catch up. They sort of thought that they had put this whole thing to bed. Yeah. And so for them to have to pivot and come around and realize, no, we're playing catch up. That's really fun. And I think that's a big part of this book two.
Yeah, I like the villain. I like that about our villain too. Kasim is a really cool character. He's probably the most complex villain we've written. And actually, I'll let you in on a little secret. There was a lot of discussion between Brian and I about him. When we first mapped out book one, we were like, have we made him like too? Are you going to be too empathetic? Like, we don't want you to like this guy. Like at the end, if this guy is defeated, we don't want you to feel sad. Like, you got to root for the hero, right? It's still a thriller. This is still a commercial work of fiction. And so finding a way, but we loved what we had done. And so, like Brian was saying, the challenge really was, how do we take that arc beyond your comfort, beyond your level, to be comfortably sympathetic, right? At some point you got to go, oh yeah, I hate that asshole. Like, and if we don't take you there, then it's just going to be really uncomfortable for everyone. Yeah. But we had that conversation because it's a little outside of the normal box of villainy. He's certainly not, Dr. Evil stroking the cat. But he is such an empathetic character in the beginning that there was a lot of work and intentionality going into his multi-book arc to get him to the point where you're like, you need to kill that guy, right?
There's a path, right, that you go on. Whatever you do, whether you become a top tier, SEAL team guy, who turns into a contractor who does terrible things, or you're this radicalized Islamic dude, you have a path, and you're not that person 5 years before, but then you realize, I am on this path. I'm really not going to be the dad that I thought I could be. All these things happen, and you're like, and I also have to protect myself, which is protecting my image. So I am going to kill this innocent kid, because what's the difference? This die is already cast. I can't get that die back. I'm already this person, And so, yeah, if you cross me, I'm going to kill you. Or if you give me a target, I don't care. I'm going to kill them because I am already that thing, right? But you can't see that. You can't see that looking ahead. You just become that thing, and you realize who you are as you're doing it. I think, at least.
Yeah, and that series of choices. I like the way you map that out. These arcs aren't in a vacuum. It's a series of choices, almost like dominoes, right? Yeah. By the time you see this horrible thing at the end where that last domino falls, it's easy to hate him. But isn't it more fun to show each of the dominoes, each of those decisions, and how they impacted the evolution of the story, but more importantly, that character's arc? And so if we can show some of those pivotal points in his arc, I just think it makes it such a more fun ride for the reader. And it's a little bit more realistic. Like,
and I think, when you're in this space, this particular world, you start to get jaded and cynical over time, right? It's like, that ideology that drove you there in the first place starts to get eroded simply because you've seen so much misery and killing, and you start to actually believe, I think, at a certain point that, well, there's really no hope. This person's, you came in hoping it was black and white. Then you realize it's very gray. But isn't it weird how then you sort of, just for your own mental stability, just go back to black and white? Well, he's a bad guy. It's just easier. He can't be saved. He's not going to do the right thing. Let's just take care of business. And I think that's the danger, right? And we always try to, work that into, our characters' internal monologues, is like from time to time they have some self-doubt. Am I still doing the right thing? Is this person truly bad?
I'm big on talking about the specs, introspection, perspection, all of the different things and ways to look at things. And one of the things that I brought, like to SEALs and everybody else when I worked, was I had been in the environment, but I didn't look at the threat side only, right? Of course, that's part of my job, but everybody focuses there. So I just took some perspective and said, what if I came in from this angle, which still goes straight to the mission, but I can now look at some badass graybeard SEAL guy that's actually happened. And he's like, why don't we just change out the governor? Like, because they're the governor. You don't get to, like, that time has passed. They're like, that guy is the boss. So yeah, I know you want to kill him. I know you want to make him not be there. I know you want to pick somebody else, but you don't get to do that. Like this, that's not how this government works. You can't, but in his mind, he's like, this is already set. This is how you do it. This is not a problem. You just blast through it. But that's not how it works. And you have to have that collection of minds. You can't be analysis by paralysis, but you also have to have someone shake you back into reality and say, this is the guy, until another Afghan guy says otherwise. And so unless you're working with that guy or the president of Afghanistan, you're not changing this. This is your reality.
Yeah, I like that. We try to show some of those complexities even more, I think, in Sons of Valor than we do in Tier 1.
Yeah, that's cool. There's a lot of good stuff in this book, man. You guys really do a great job. I mean, I always laud you guys because I love what you do. But really, when I read these books, and I'm not big on turns out I'm not that big on the military thriller novels, but I read your guys' books because I really enjoy them, and it's fantastic. You guys should all get Sons of Valor 2. Hopefully you've already read Sons of Valor 1, but definitely get those. And look, here's the link. I'll put it right here on the page so that we can have that up there, right there. Sons of Valor. Just go to Amazon, look in the comments. You'll see it. Let me take a real quick break to talk to everybody on the audience side. So there's two things I want to tell you. One is support the Break It Down Show. Just subscribe, watch on YouTube, or go to breakitdownshow.com. Click on the PayPal link. Look, put a couple of bucks in the pot. That helps me fund the show. I'm glad to do the work. Would you guys help me pay for some of the costs? Would you guys buy me some gas so I can go out to Texas this summer and go tell the story of the border and people that live in those counties? Wow. That's something that I'm glad to go do. Help me out with that. That's how you can support the show. The other thing I want to say, Save the Brave is doing their annual Ride for the Brave. It's the third one, right? And I'm going to be going out with Scotty, and I'm riding the truck. He's riding the motorcycle, and we can use your support. How can you support us? Well, you can go to savethebrave.org, and you can kick in some money there. You can Pete at breakitdownshow.com. Say, hey, Pete, what can I do? I want to do something special. You can meet us in Temecula, Tucson, El Paso, Odessa, Dallas, Houston, New Orleans, Birmingham, Atlanta, or Charleston. Come out. Look, we're going to drive thousands of miles. Could you drive 4 hours? Sure, of course you can. You can also buy a gas card. If we could fund gas, that's a fantastic thing, because with charity has to pay for that either way. So these are things you can do to support Save the Brave and help keep veterans alive. And then when they do kill themselves, how do we support that family? That's stuff that we work on. We've got scholarships, all these things. So please help us as we go and do this thing. All right, that's me talking about stuff for me. Fellas, what should we talk about next?
What do you?
I mean, we've got book 3 of the Shepherds coming out in the fall, so we're really excited about that.
Yeah, that series has been a lot of fun for us. It's been very well received. It's exciting to see people get on board with something a little more speculative from us, but something we're passionate about. So yeah, exciting to see that book, and we're also excited to be able to tell people that Tyndale House must have loved it too, because we've already signed another deal for 3 more books. So we can promise at least 6 books in that series, and hopefully more. Man, that is great news. That is great news, you guys. I love hearing that. I love you guys doing fantastic things. Any thoughts or any progress on getting some Netflix money or something like that to make these things reality? That's for sure.
Very busy boys. So, yes. We've sold how many, Jeff? 4 or 5 now. 5 different projects to studios. So we're really excited. I think over the next couple months we'll be able to finally make some announcements as we sort out all the the contracts and stuff.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, everyone thinks that every writer's dream is to sell their stuff and create a TV show because you get so filthy rich doing it. First of all, it's not true, but secondly, for us, it's a little bit different model that's worth talking about for a second. Brian and I made a decision several years ago that if you look at storytelling in America right now, it's not like when we were all kids. Everybody that loved thrillers read Ludlum and they read Clancy, and that was millions and millions of people. We have a very fragmented demographics of people and how they receive their stories. Is a enormous number of people who are never going to read a novel ever, but they read graphic novels. We have an enormous number of people that are audiobook listeners, and our books do tremendously there. But there's also a huge number of people that they just get their stories. They fill that need through media, whether it's in short format or TV or streaming or film. And so we made a decision a few years ago that if we're really going to be the storytellers we want to be able to reach everyone with our stories. And so our model was a little bit different of how to break into that space. And we can't, unfortunately, reveal too much right now because we have to wait for producers to make those announcements. But that's what's so exciting about it is we're developing these stories for media that will have book components, and we get to be involved. We're not just taking a book and selling it to someone and hope they don't do something horrible with it. We're actually able to be involved. All of our projects so far involve us as producers with the programs, whether it's a film or TV. So we're going to be involved both learning that space and hopefully bringing our brand of storytelling to the screen. So really exciting year. Man, it's killing me not to tell you the details.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time. It's like, maybe before we talk to Pete, we can announce this.
Yeah. Well, you guys are going to have another book out in about 2 minutes. So we'll just talk. Let's sell some books real quick. Barbara, who I grew up with, she's one of my moms, wants to know where should she start reading your books? Sons of Valor, Dark Angel, Tier 1. Where do you guys want to direct Barbara so she can start spending that money and buying your guys' books?
I wish I knew Barbara personally so I could give her better advice. I would say that if what you're looking for is, fairly complicated, character-driven stories, but focused on good old-fashioned Tier 1 SEAL team action, Sons of Valor is the place to go. I think we have a lot of complexity and character in those compared to others, but that's what it is at its core. The Dark Angel, Dark Intercept is the first book in that series, the Shepherd series. It's a really cool series if you're into things with a little bit more speculative element. That series involves some questions of crisis and faith. It's the speculative and supernatural elements in those books are faith-based, but they also challenge the reader to think about some things that they do or do not believe, the nature of good and evil, the impact of fighting evil and what it has on the warfighter, this crisis that you can have in your own belief. And I know we talked about that with you last time, Pete. So it sort of depends. I'm sorry, Barbara, I wish I could tell you this is the one for you, but maybe that helps a little bit, I hope.
I'm going to put a link for Dark Intercept up right now. Dark Intercept. Let's see how I type. I type terrible. Great.
That 2 fingers? Is that 2 fingers, Pete?
No, the sad thing is I use 9. I don't use this thumb for some reason. I use 9 and I type. All right, there's Dark Intercept link. It's going to be in the comments. Hopefully you can see that. If not, I'll put that up here in the post. But yeah, that's great. You guys do have such great characters, and you guys are so fantastic about all the stories, and your production level is bananas. Like there's always something new. So if you guys read books in a month, you'll take you a while to catch up, but these guys will be able to keep up with you once you get there because they just crank out books all the time. Woo! All right, let me back up here. Let me push this button over here to Sons of Valor 2 on the screen so you guys can grab that book. Yeah, so okay, I wanted to show. I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to put a picture up. This is the map for the movie Tenet, right? And Chris Nolan does that whole messing with time thing. So you need a map to understand the movie. Have you guys watched this movie at all? Tenet?
Yes.
Yeah, bananas, right? And so you need a map to understand it. Have you guys mapped your universe? Because it's getting bigger, and it seems like there's going to be another. Like you're going to go in another direction still. You're going to age these characters. Do you guys have an idea what your universe looks like?
No map like that.
Well, that's one story. You guys.
I think it's okay to say, Jeff, is it okay to talk a little bit about book 7, you think, with who's coming back?
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so a lot of people have asked us, oh, is the Tier 1 series over, or is it done? There was a lot of folks who will post reviews. Oh, I'm so sad. I read the last book in the series, Collateral. No, it's not the last book. It's just the last book that we had written before we really needed to take a break because, like you said, Pete, we're doing a lot. So we wanted to stand up the Sons of Valor series. We wanted to stand up the Shepherd series. We did that book called Rogue Asset, which is the Webb Griffin book. So we had a lot of stuff that we were trying to cram in. And so we had to take a little break from Tier 1, but Tier 1 comes back. So book 7 is Dempsey. The title is Dempsey, and clearly it's about Dempsey mainly. It's about his return. If you remember the last book, Collateral, he sort of was tasked with a mission from Jarvis, and it wasn't really clear. We didn't really make it clear what was going on there. So when you jump into book 7, some time has passed, and he's back, but also Jake is back, his son. So we're going to continue. When you talk about that legacy, you talk about that timeline. I think we had planted some seeds, and the savvy reader probably saw that, oh yeah, Jake is maybe gravitating towards a life potentially in naval special warfare. So, that's part of our long-term plan.
What's really fun in terms of, maybe we should have a map like that as I think about this, because what's been cool with Sons of Valor now doing very well is that's a shared universe, right? It's a spin-off within the same world. And so being able to put little Easter eggs, where there's some interaction between the Task Force Ember and Chunk and his team in the books. Not huge, not heavy-handed, but it does require a lot of thinking about how those timelines intersect. When is the book going to come out? Like we can't reference something in Sons of Valor 2 about Dempsey when Dempsey is off doing this thing and his book doesn't come out till February or whatever. And so it probably would be helpful. In fact, Brian, I would just ask you here publicly if you could generate that timeline map.
Okay.
Maybe while I relax with my family this weekend, if you could take a few hours and do that, that'd be great.
Sure. Be happy to.
Don't feel like you have to rush on that, Brian, but if you could have it done by tomorrow.
You want that color coded?
Yeah.
Ideally. Yeah.
I made since we're talking about that, I think I have a slide on here I can show you guys. I made this slide. It's pretty incredible. This slide right here was a district governor's plan that I made, and I put into Army speak so we could understand like when to do things, what didn't require our attention, everything else. And the first response from the Army guy was, he didn't make this thing. And I'm like, yeah, he didn't make it in PowerPoint, but it's just a funny thing, man. The military provides these great characters where this guy also, and I'm never going to say his name because it doesn't really matter what his name was. He also wrote a survey where the answer to every question was yes. If we gave you a radio, would you take it? Yes. If we gave you a radio and you took it, would you listen to the programming that was on the radio? Yes. I mean, keep in mind the person asking the questions has a gun and has guys with guns behind him, right? And so he's like, yes. So like we find a universal, info set of yes to 100% of the respondents to the survey. Like, what are you guys doing? These people exist, man. How do you guys deal with that? How do you guys put a good, crazy, bureaucratic Army guy or Marine guy or whatever it's going to be into your stories? Because they are just so, in my life, they're frustrating as fuck. But in retrospect, you're like, these guys were great. They just provided some levity, even though they didn't mean to. No characters like that?
No. I was thinking he was going to take this one. So I mean, even in the first Tier 1 book, Kittinger was supposed to be painted as this, fat bureaucrat who's, mired down in just the politics. And in one sense he was, but Jarvis's, initial perception of this guy was detrimental, right? Because, a lot of these guys are very crafty in their own way, right? I don't think you can rise in a bureaucracy without having a certain skill set, right? So you underestimate the bureaucrat to your own peril. And I think that's something that we try to work in. Maybe that's our own little twist on just fat, impediment, these red tape guys that are putting up all the red tape and our characters have to cut through it. Sometimes they find, oh no, maybe this red tape, was blocking off an elevator door that, pit, an elevator that, I could fall into the bottom, So sometimes we try to flip that script a little bit too.
Yeah, that, and also the rice bowl mentality, right? We do show that. I think we've done a good job with that in Tier 1. We have a little bit of it in Sons of Valor as well. But that idea of breaking through that bureaucracy, the bureaucracy that separates organizations, and as you know, like this last 20 years has probably been the greatest improvement in joint operations and how people work together. We now have a generation of warfighters who don't remember what it was like to not be like that. Like they've only ever known that. But even with that progress, there is still that, I'm not going to share that with you because I got this other thing going on. Right. And it's less in joint military operations. Right. It's a little bit more in joint interagency operations, I think. And so we do try to show some of that stuff and how do you get around it? How do you use it to your advantage? And like Brian said, hey, sometimes you're like screwing something really big up if you try to go around this stuff. It maybe occasionally is there for a reason.
Yeah, and the guy that provides top cover for you appreciates it if they don't do things that fuck up the top cover that they provide, like another thing, right? You're like, oh,
and you don't get a second chance, right? Like you're going to screw that guy one time and then you better never call him again because it's over.
And it's easy. You really do need some seasoning before you make some of these calls on the fly because it's easy to make the wrong call because you don't. Like one of the things I would tell commanders, like I'm going to be laser focused, like granular focused on these things. And every now and then you're going to have to lift me up and scooch me over and drop me back down. You'll get that same clarity, but I need to know enough about what you know so that I'm giving you what you need. Because there's that vertical communication chain that has to happen. Yeah, you killed this guy. However, and you're like, God damn it. If I would have known, I would have approached this problem differently.
We talk a lot about that. I think, Jeff, that's something we talk about, the layers of the onions. The layer, the intelligence community is like an onion. You're peeling back the layers, and Jeff always likes to say when he was advancing through his career, he'd get to one point, he'd say, "Oh, now I've made it. I think I know everything that's going on." And then you get to the next level, you're like, "Oh no, I had no idea. Now I know. Now I see the full picture." Right. So we try to incorporate that into the narrative too.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. We have Joe Pistone on the show tomorrow, and I bring that up one to plug the show, but also for those that don't know, it's Donnie Brasco, the actual guy who did the actual deep cover operation, and so he's going to be on the show. This guy lived a book that you guys would write. It's crazy when you hear these stories. Can you guys even collect enough of these guys in your world? Because they just have these. Look, they'll have these moments of wisdom when they'll say something, and you're like, oh my God. Yeah, of course. Right. Because they were so in it. They just say stuff and you're just like, I need that. I need that. It's got to be that you guys need these kind of guys in your life. Oh yeah. And we're very blessed to have them too. Right. But some of whom we served with in our past lives, but also relationships we've made since. Some of them are writing now. Right. And so we have relationships, very close relationships with our brother veterans and brother and sister veterans who are writing in that space. Met young lady that I'm Adair the other day at a book signing who did an entire career in naval intelligence and worked with some top tier folks, and they're out there. And so some of those relationships are old and some of them are new. Some of them are people we've only known a few years, some through writing, some through shows like this where we've met interesting people. But yeah, it cannot be more valuable to us as storytellers. Not that we're trying to exploit people, but yeah, every time you meet someone else, it's another whole book idea. You're like, oh, maybe if we stop meeting people, we could slow down, Brian. I have the same problem. There's a million things that I want to do, but there's only so many things I can do, Right. And like, I'm supposed to say no to more shows, but like, I love talking to you guys. Anytime you guys come on, there you go. So there's, I don't know, 5 shows a year, right? And you only have so many shows you can do. And then there's like, well, I love Jim D. Felice. I'm never going to say no to him. And so there's, and all of a sudden, like, of course I do 5 shows a week. How can I? I love everybody. I love talking to these guys. I think the most important question of the day has been asked by Barbara. She says, are any of your characters based on Pete Turner?
I would say there's a little bit of Pete Turner in every single character.
I'm not as much of a character as I used to be. I'm a little more mellowed, but yeah, that's pretty funny. I almost wore my Andrews and Wilson hat today, by the way, but I failed to grab it on the way out of the house. Look, we're getting towards the end. What do you guys either want to ask me or what do we want to say in closing?
Well, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your tour that you're doing this summer.
Oh, the Ride for the Brave?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I guess I should say all this, and again, I'm talking to the audience as well, so you guys are welcome to listen in. My brother passed away. He's a veteran, committed suicide, and so it's even more poignant this year because look, we all get these phone calls. So and so died. So and so's brother died. Someone, and it doesn't stop. And so, what can we do? And the Ride for the Brave is part of that. So Ride for the Brave was created because Scott lost a buddy, one of his lifelong friends before the military. Basically drank himself to death, right? Veteran. And these guys started their careers together. They decided to go into, and it just broke his heart. And he couldn't take any more of it at that time. And, we all reached this point. We were like, I can't take any more of these, these losses. So, he's like, I'm going to ride across the nation to South Carolina. I'm going to speak at my friend's funeral and put him to rest. And I said, look, there's no way you're riding your motorcycle across the nation without someone going with you. I'm going to drive and I'll be your support guy. And then he's like, well, then it turned into this whole charity thing. And what we discovered, this is in 2020, is it the grip of the pandemic? The South was just red hot with the stuff. But we realized that once you leave your house and you go out, there's other people that are desperate and they just need to be shepherded or given something to do or an ability to express themselves either through work or through money or both. And so we just started doing this and going out. Is it the most lucrative way to raise money? Probably not. And it's absolutely a form of veteran Ramadan. It is not easy to ride through. Look, from Tucson to Dallas in July. Oh my God. It's so damn hot. And that's just that portion, right?
So is this your third time doing it now?
Third year in a row. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what it is, right? We go out and we interact with the community, like you need a boost or you need to understand better what it is. You need to meet people that have had guns in their mouths. So you can be like, oh my God, we can work on this. Well, those guys all ride with us. They come along and the different riding groups will jump in. So like from the moment we hit the California state line, oddly enough, our level of support goes way up. Not that there's not great people here in California, but the riders in Arizona will not let us ride by ourselves across Arizona. We will have escort the entire way. And so that's the level of support that we get for this thing. And so we just continue to do it because how can we stop now? All this support is out there. All these people that want to fight this thing, they're all out there doing it. And so that's why we do the Ride for the Brave, is because it needs to get done. And then I'm going to say one more thing. This is me on my soapbox. If you're thinking about like, how do I help someone who is thinking about taking their own life? Don't say to them, call me before you do. You wouldn't do a fucked up thing like that if someone was drowning or if they had cancer. Hey, right before you die, make sure you call me so I can help you. What the fuck are you going to do? The time to help them was months, weeks, years ago, right? Get in now and help someone. They don't have to be in peril right now, but don't wait to the end of the rope and expect them to take a hand off the rope to do something for you. You've got to go out and find these people in your lives and figure out what it is that's going to make them feel valuable. And for me, it's been working with Save the Brave, right? My ability to go out and be of service to others, to my brothers and sisters in the military. Look, this is a Marine heavy unit, right? And I'm the Army spy guy that's there. So it don't matter to me about all that stuff. And I for sure am like not the welcome. They don't diswelcome me, but those guys are family. I am the external guy. I don't care. We all work on the same problem and we all work on it and we love doing it. That is the Ride for the Brave. We do other things to Save the Brave, but that's the thing for the ride.
Okay.
Well, I hope you'll let us know how we can
Yes.
support you, Pete, and not just financially, which we're also happy to do, but
Yeah.
How to help promote it and get the word out and encourage people to support what you're doing, because what you're doing is insanely important.
Yeah, you guys know. I mean, the people that don't get the phone calls, they don't know, but it's almost daily that someone in my network has to call me to tell me that, what do we do now? Right. And that's the other thing. What do we do now? That's the other, once my brother lost his life, it was really, and he and I had talked about this. This wasn't his first concept of this. And by the way, for those that don't know, I struggle with suicidal ideation too. I'm not in peril right now. I work hard to manage my well-being, but my brother lost that battle. Right. So now what do you have to? Well, now I've got to rally a bunch of people and try to, as much as I can. You can never fill the hole my brother left, but Save the Brave comes in, and my niece is getting the initial scholarship that goes to those kids, the families of the fallen soldier or service member. So that's a way we can help. We'll talk off mic and we can work that stuff out. I don't want to end on a heavy note, but just definitely, you guys, you see my passion about this. If you're interested in helping, Pete at breakitdownshow.com, let me know. All right, so let's end on something more positive. What do you guys have us more positive, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hey, join us. Come with us on our journey too. You can go to andrews-wilson.com. We we don't spam people. There's a newsletter there. You can join if you want to, but we really do enjoy interacting with our readers. Brian has worked hard with our folks to create this amazing website. We actually have a lot of readers who send pictures in, and we have a place for them to interact with us on the website. We have places where we share things. And if you sign up for our newsletter, we don't spam you with anything. It's just news that, a book that's coming out or a new film deal or whatever. So we'd love to have as many people, especially our military and veteran brothers and sisters, join us on this journey, because we've met so many amazing people over the last 7 years that there's still plenty of room. So come on and join us.
There, I just did it. I just subscribed. I can't believe I hadn't already done it. So you got one more on the list already right now.
Yeah,
we're the best newsletters. You're gonna love getting email from us. I promise. You'll want to open that email as soon as it hits your inbox.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brian, what do you want to say in closing?
I just want to say we love your show. I know we're always poking our heads in and getting on probably more than we should, but thank you so much. I loved all the comments. We had great participation, seeing names there, people chiming in and laughing along with us as we were telling our stories and stuff. So it's just such a great program, and we love you to death, brother. So thanks for having us on.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Let me run this thing, and then I'll get right back to you. Let me just get this thing toggled back. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for